A majority of life on Earth is aquatic. When someone thinks of a massive biological problem in our world, the decline of the Amazon rainforest or the destruction of the Great Barrier Reef often come to mind. But perhaps one of the most important ecosystems, the world of the kelp forests, is also in trouble. Marine algae, through carbon sequestration, produce 70 to 80% of the oxygen in our atmosphere.
They're sort of the most important, we call them plants. They're not actually plants, they're protists, but sort of one of the most important organisms in the ocean because they're the ones that are photosynthesizing and they're the base of the marine food web. And so they're doing the work of, sucking up carbon dioxide, bicarbonate, and converting it into an organic form, which other organisms can consume.
What some consider the underwater equivalent of redwood forests, kelp can reach lengths of almost 200 feet, growing nearly 1.5 feet per day. Mostly found on the Pacific coast, kelp thrive on the shallow, rocky shoreline. Kelp forests are created when a number of different species of kelp grow closely together, much like trees on land. Inside these cities, kelp form a habitat for a number of different species. The kelp provides protection from predators and storms, nursery for smaller animals, and food. Fish, invertebrates, and marine mammal life all call these towers home. In a healthy ecosystem, animals, plants, and microorganisms depend on each other and their surroundings in order to survive. If even one of these dominoes falls, it could have a drastic effect on the rest of the environment. The California coastline is a perfect example of this butterfly effect. Off the coast of California, where kelp forests used to grow in abundance, barren wastelands of grazing sea urchins now pollute the ocean floor. This is caused by a process called kelp deforestation. Kelp deforestation has mainly occurred because of the loss of keystone species, which are animals that are crucial to the balance of their ecosystem. In the case of kelp forests, sea otters are the keystone species. Although they may not seem it, sea otters are the apex predators of kelp forests and other coastal ecosystems. They hunt hard-shelled invertebrates such as mussels, clams, and most importantly, sea urchins. Sea urchins graze on the holdfasts, or anchor points, of the kelp, and without the presence of sea otters in the ecosystem, it allows for the sea urchin population to go unchecked.
What happens is that sea urchins and kelp usually live in harmony with one another. They're both natives. There's nothing weird about that. But normally what happens is that sea urchins, they live in cracks and crevices and places where they're not really exposed. And because there's other things that come out that eat them, like otters will eat them, but also monkey face eels and sheephead fish and other things, lobsters, they'll eat them too. And so typically they don't come out of cracks and crevices, even though they're living in kelp forests. But if they get hungry, if they start starving, then they will come out, and then they change their behavior and they go rogue. And what rogue means is that they stay out and they just basically eat everything in sight.
This is essentially where the problem starts. Sea otters were once estimated to have a population between 150 and 300,000. However, over centuries, their numbers have drastically decreased. In recent years, however, sea otter populations have steadily increased, but they are only a fraction of the size that they once were. However, sea urchins aren't the only problem, as climate change becomes an ever-growing issue.
Our fish populations, even inside our marine reserves, we're shifting to more tropical fish as we get these more intense and longer heat waves. Marine heat waves is what they're called.
While many plants and organisms can tolerate warmer waters, the nutrients these waters are able to hold steadily declines. As the water temperature rises, the nutrients it supports decreases. When the surface water of the ocean is cool, it is easier for deeper, more nutrient-rich water to rise, supplying small fish, plants, and microorganisms with food.
But the thing that's really problematic about the warmer water is it doesn't have, the nutrients go way down. And so that means that the growth rate of the kelp and the reproduction of the kelp goes way down. So even though you might have a kelp forest for a little while, it's not a very productive one. And so then the urchins will go rogue, even in the kelp forest that you see as existing. It's just because the quality of the detritus, the drift kelp, is so poor that they start coming out. So that's why cold water, several years of cold water are really, really a remedy.
But not all hope is lost. In recent years, the water quality off the coast of California has actually gotten much better. As new regulations are enacted, coastal power plants, desalination plants, and other polluters are being shut down. NPAs have also played a massive role in preserving our ecosystems. NPAs, or Northern Periphery and Arctic Areas, are land set aside by the government that aims at conserving marine habitats. About 20 to 30% of the California coastline is set aside under these NPAs and allow for habitats across the coast to return to normal.
Because there's so many and so much coverage of those things, the idea is, and we'll know whether this works in a little while, that by having those, let's say 20% of the habitat set aside as being no-take, that the babies from those areas can go and repopulate other areas because the larvae go outside of the NPAs themselves and they get distributed, and so that you could have a system where you are making the system more stable and buffered by having these NPAs.
Kelp, as important as it may be to the Pacific coast of North America, is just one in a series of problems that our planet's oceans are facing. Coral reefs are dying as they fail to adapt quick enough to the rapidly increasing ocean temperatures. Entire species of animals are migrating to the poles to escape the warming waters. But there's still an ounce of hope. Scientists work to try and find new solutions to help kelp and other species adapt and regrow, rebuilding the ocean and the climate.